Aquarius Productions specializes in photography, videography, sound, and entertainment. Comedy reels, headshots, music videos. Make sure to catch Zachary Perkins' latest music video being released next week. Aquarius worked with the talent of Astro Clown Productions to make it mwah. She literally wrote insert chef's kiss here. So I didn't improvise that. They know what it's like to have a vision. Aquarius is here to help you realize it. And if you aren't an entertainer and you love entertainment, I mean, who doesn't? They are here to produce comedy and music events for you. Contact their Facebook or Instagram page for details. Aquarius, content created by artists for artists. Let's play the music.
Oh, you know what that music means? That music means it is time for the Open Micers podcast. My name is Jason Robbins.
I wear the same hat every episode. I'm Jacob Craig. And our guest tonight, I'll tell him.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell him, Big Daddy.
You tell him.
Our guest tonight is a comic book colorist, editor, producer, and writer who has worked on titles such as Avengers, Spider-Man, She-Hulk, and Superman. You can see her at Pensacon in Pensacola, Florida at the Pensacola Bay Center, May 21st through the 23rd. Please give a warm welcome to the show, Miss Renee Witterstaetter. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
We are doing great. I'm so glad you're here.
Me too. Let me see if I can do that. Mwah. Is that how you do it?
Yeah, that's much better than mine. I should have delegated the chef's kiss to you or to someone else. I'm not a very good actor. But,
well, it's a little known fact, actually, that I don't know if you remember that Joe Jusko big, tall She-Hulk poster that was very popular.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The lip marks on that poster where She-Hulk kisses the poster, those are actually my lips.
Really?
Wow.
Model.
Wow.
So I'm gonna rewrite my intro here real quick to include lip model.
Yeah. And there was a contest at the Marvel offices to see who had the best, lip smack. So we had to put on red lipstick and kiss a piece of paper. So the runner-up was actually Glenn Herdling, who was another assistant editor. So I just narrowly beat out Glenn. His lips were probably better than mine, probably more voluptuous, but for some reason he didn't get it. So he's always been bitter about that. Anyway,
I know
I digress.
There are a lot of grudges held in the lip modeling industry, from what I understand.
I know. It's just vicious. It's vicious.
So you've had quite the career. Before we get into any of that, what new stuff are you working on lately?
Oh gosh, I'm always working on something. Actually, Michael Golden, who's one of my main business partners, he and I are working on some creator-owned projects right now, which I will be doing Indiegogos on soon. So you guys can be looking for that. I don't really want to say names or tell too much about it until I actually launch it. But when I do, we can come back on and talk more about it.
Fantastic.
I'm also working on an updated book of my Jackie Chan movies. I did a book for Warner Brothers some time ago now called Dying for Action, the life and films of Jackie Chan. So I'm updating that book. And I'm also working on a few other books that I'm not really ready to announce yet. But in the midst of all that, I've also started a website called happyspacepop.com. And you can go on there and buy virtual experiences with some of the media guests that I represent and also with some of the artists I represent. And of course, we are now starting to book shows again. So I'm very busy booking talent for shows. So convention promoters can always contact me and, get my list of talent. And, there are lots of folks that are really eager to get back out there and meet the fans and, start interacting with people again.
So how does it feel now that everything's kind of getting back to normal? Is Pensacon your first kind of foot back out into the public?
Well, I think it is probably one of the first larger shows that we've done. Mm-hmm. We've been doing a lot of store appearances with Michael Golden and also with Arthur Sudam. Especially with Arthur this year, the pops, the Marvel Zombie pops have been really super hot, and he's been signing a lot of those because they're all based on his Marvel Zombie designs. And so that's been really cool. But we've done a lot of smaller venues. We've done store appearances. We've done CGC Signature Series with all the guys, Jim Shooter, Michael Golden, Arthur Sudan, myself. And we're going to be doing more of that stuff. But Pensacon is the first bigger show that we've done. And it's our first time to do Pensacon. Actually, I've never been to Pensacon before.
Oh, you're going to have so much fun. You're going to have so much fun. Pensacon's one of the best shows on the earth.
Is it? Oh,
Yeah. Jason
it's not,
here, I think
it's not just one place. It's the entire city.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
It's like a whole, like, what, 2 or 3 blocks taken up with a convention.
Seriously?
I know Jason here has like 5 panels to do or something like that at the convention.
Yeah, I got to do like one Friday night if I can get there on time. I have 3 on Saturday and I think 2 on Sunday.
Wow.
So I don't even know when I'm going to get to go in the actual convention itself because I'm going to be doing so many panels over the weekend.
That's exciting. Yeah,
But,
I hear that that registration, people buying tickets, is really strong. So I think it's going to be an excellent show.
One thing I will recommend is when you're in town, you have to eat at McGuire's. That
Really?
is,
Wow.
Yeah.
McGuire's. Go get yourself an Irish wake and try the hamburgers. They got the good great hamburgers. The shepherd's pie is awesome. The fish and chips is awesome. Anything you want, they got.
Wow, that sounds cool. Well,
Yeah,
I love food, so.
I just watched your interview with, or the interview on your other podcast with the voice of Bowser last night, Jason Kinney James.
Yeah.
And he said that he didn't believe the McGuire's hype until his agent took him there. And the second day he was in town, he had the same exact thing at McGuire's again because it was so good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 2 days in a row.
It's Irish food.
No, not exactly. I mean, yeah, it does have some Irish food. Like I said, it's got like shepherd's pie, stuff like that. But man, their hamburgers are they're about the size of a couch cushion. And they have, if you're vegetarian, they have vegetarian burgers. They've got anything you want. They have. It's the best.
Huge product placement for McGuire's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
sponsored by McGuire's.
If they would just give me a gift certificate every Pensacon, I would pimp them every show.
You need to set that up, man. You do.
Yeah.
I might have to.
Get us a sponsorship, Jason. Come on.
Yeah, go
I will.
But before we move too much away from it, you mentioned the book you wrote, the biography about Jackie Chan, and I saw that in your biography, and I got so excited because I'm such a huge Jackie Chan fan.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, so I want to talk about like where your love of Jackie Chan came from. How did you decide you wanted to write a biography? Have you ever met him?
Oh yeah, I used to
All
work
of
with
that.
Jackie all the time. Yeah.
Oh, before we go, I'm sorry to interrupt. Before we go any further, we are finally on Twitch. We have been for a few minutes. So if you missed the beginning, and this is going to be on YouTube, if you missed the beginning of the show, just go over and listen to the podcast form. You only missed about 2 minutes. So go back and listen to that.
Talking about restaurants and places to eat.
Yeah.
And the hardships of the lip model industry.
Yeah.
Anything you missed. Oh, so Jackie. Oh, okay.
Yes.
So I was an editor at Marvel, and one of my friends, who was my office mate, Marie Javens, we were sharing an office together at the time, took me to Chinatown to see a movie. And it turned out to be a Jackie Chan movie. It was Armor of God, I think.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one.
And I loved Jackie immediately. I said, this guy is like a superhero come to life. He could be Spider-Man. I mean, he's just amazing. And so I started developing an idea. And, I said, we should do a comic book on Jackie. He's like a comic book character come to life. Why don't we reverse that? Why don't we do a comic book based on him? So I came together with an idea. I found a way to contact Jackie's agents in Hong Kong. And I said, hey, I'm interested in doing a comic book based on Jackie, or, with Jackie as a consultant. And they said, oh, that's a great idea. When can you meet with us? And can you be in Hong Kong next week? And I said, yeah, probably. So I asked my bosses at Marvel, who was Mark Grunwald at the time, and said, Mark, do you mind if I take a month off and go to Hong Kong? And Mark was the kind of guy that, like, always wanted you to pursue your dream, always wanted you to go after whatever it is that you wanted to do. And he arranged for me to actually go over to China for a month and without losing my job. And of course, I still had to do some work while I was there, but I went over, met with Jackie, met with his people, immediately hit it off, and stayed over there for a month and had him consult with me on putting this project together. And Michael Golden was the co-creator on that. And we had Rick Myers, who's a martial arts expert, also as a consultant on the book. And it's called Spartan X. And we're going to be doing, one of the projects we're working on now is doing a trade paperback of Spartan X that we're hoping to have out in a year. It's one of the things I'm going to be doing an Indiegogo on. But that led to me not only doing the comic book with Jackie, but it led to me writing Dying for Action, the life and films of Jackie Chan. And that's been published by Warner Books in the US and Titan Books in England. That's one of 2 books I've had out through Titan. And also, I ended up working on a lot of movies with Jackie. I worked on Rush Hour 2. I worked, I was on the set of a lot of his Hong Kong movies like Police Story 3 and Drunken Master 2. And, he's an amazing person, very much a humanitarian, very, very sweet person. And, I hit it off with him immediately. And when I went to Hong Kong on that adventure for the first time, he couldn't have been more welcoming or more kind. I have nothing but good things to say about Jackie.
Absolutely. I need to pick up that book for sure.
Yeah.
And I will be updating it. He's done a lot, he's done a lot of other things, and probably broken a lot more body parts since I wrote that book.
Oh, wow.
So, we got to update the injury tally for Jackie.
Yeah, I think
I can imagine that he can probably...
The Armor of the Gods was the first one you saw. I think that was the one where he actually that's where he got the hole in his skull.
I know, falling out of the tree in Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, he almost died.
I know.
Yeah.
I feel like Jackie...
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Now, one time, like I was in Jackie's office and he takes my hand and he goes, put your hand here. And he puts my hand on his skull. And then he starts to hum. And you could actually feel where he still had a hole in his head.
Oh my God.
From that accident in Yugoslavia. So that's like one of his parlor tricks.
I feel like he could probably compare injuries with Johnny Knoxville and come out on top.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I think Johnny got injured almost on purpose. Jackie didn't really get injured.
Yeah.
His intent was not to fall out of a tree. Johnny Knoxville's like, oh, let's fall out of a tree and see what happens.
I wonder how hard it is for Jackie Chan to actually get movies made, because it's got to be impossible to get insurance on the movies that he makes.
No, in Hong Kong, it was like the wild, wild west. Anything goes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same in the U.S. Of course. In the U.S., you have to have Lloyd's of London insurance. You have to have all. It's like they try to get him not to do his own stunts, but he's like, no, I'm doing my own stunts. And but in Hong Kong, he's the boss. He could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, how many times he wanted. Nobody was going to tell him not to do a stunt. Jackie would just do whatever he wanted to do. Now, I think it's been about 2 years since I saw him. I visited him on a set outside of Beijing a few years ago. And it's a little more stringent now. And of course, he's a little bit older now. But, with the Chinese government, he was filming Beijing, they had different rules than they did back in the Hong Kong days. Because most of the time when I was in Hong Kong, it was before the changeover in 97.
Yeah.
Before it went back to China. So, but it was a completely different animal. But no, Jackie was always able to have complete creative control on his movies that he did in Hong Kong.
Must be nice.
Look at the product. It's every movie Jackie did. I really feel it was a labor of love, and he really pushed the envelope and propelled Hong Kong cinema over and over again. When he started doing period pieces, when he started doing kung fu movies like in the modern age, like period pieces like Project A, other people started doing that. You know, when he started doing, you know, the police story movies, then other people started doing that.
Yeah.
You can look at even U.S. movies like Tango and Cash and some other movies, and they take stunts verbatim out of Jackie Chan movies and recreate them.
Mm-hmm.
And other, you know, other movies do that all the time too. And of course, Jackie was heavily influenced by Buster Keaton, another another hero of mine. I absolutely love Buster Keaton, which is probably one of the reasons that I gravitated so much to Jackie's movies in the beginning.
And it's crazy. You see all those movies that Jackie Chan, like when he really hit America back in, you know, in the mid 90s, I guess, mid to late 90s, when he really exploded over here.
Right.
I remember there was just like one movie after another, like a new Jackie Chan movie would be in the theaters like every 3 to 4 months.
Oh, I know.
Because he had so many movies, and they were just bringing all those movies over here, redubbing them in English and releasing them under a different name.
They're awesome because he has such a great screen presence.
Mm-hmm.
But that was his second attempt at the U.S. market. You know, he was in the U.S. back in the 80s doing The Big Brawl, Cannonball Run.
Oh, yeah. That was where I first saw him, was Cannonball Run, the Cannonball Run 1 and 2.
Right. And, you know, he found it sort of constricting that he couldn't do everything he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like even on Cannonball Run, where he had to do a fight scene in the sand, he was like, you know, it would be better if I wasn't standing in the sand because it's hard to, you know, do the things I want to do. But they're like, no, you're going to fight in the sand. So I think at that point he wanted to go back to Hong Kong and do things his own way, and it paid off for him. You know,
right. I mean, who wouldn't? Yeah, but I want to move the conversation more towards
Jackie all day. But
yeah, I know. I could as well.
So many good Jackie Chan stories. I'll save them for my updated book.
Please, yes, just shoot me an email whenever you are ready to promote that. We will have a whole discussion.
I'm bathing myself in insect repellent.
Oh, I understand. We live here in the South, and you'll get flown away by mosquitoes down here.
I'm in Texas right now.
Oh yeah, you'll definitely get flown away by mosquitoes in Texas.
I know, but my house is full of boxes that I'm packing for shows. So I was trying to give you something picturesque to look at.
Yeah.
Boxes. All right, what should we talk about now?
Okay, so I want to start at the very beginning. When was the first time you ever picked up a comic book? And when you did you ever think that you would want to, you know, work on that as your career?
Oh. Well, I had 2 older brothers, still do. So I'm in Texas to see them. But they had comic books in their room. They had lots of very interesting things in their room. They had Doc Savage books. They had magazines about horrible, brutal murders in the Wild West that were fascinating.
Hell yeah.
And, and they had some comic books. So I would go into their room when they weren't home and go through all their stuff. And and read all their books. And the first comic books I remember picking up were maybe not the most exciting books for comic book collectors, but it were the Jerry Lewis comics from DC. I think Neil Adams drew some of those too. And as a kid, they were absolutely hilarious. I loved them. And also they had the Spider-Man issue where he met Mary Jane for the first time. But it was in really horrible condition. The cover had been torn off of it. But I was looking at it, and I loved the artwork, and I loved the characters. And there was something very compelling about it to me. I don't know if at that age I thought about working in comic books as a career. I drew a lot. I was always drawing. But I always knew that I was going to work in some creative field, because I always gravitated towards storytelling. I always gravitated to movies and books and, you know, creating my own little stories and writing. So what I did end up doing was I ended up getting my degree in English and journalism. And I worked on a lot of small newspapers and even did some work for the Dallas Morning News for a while. But my first real job out of college happened to be working for a company in Dallas called Bulldog Productions, and they were putting on the Dallas Fantasy Fairs, which were really the forerunners of the modern day conventions, the first ones that really took comic guests and media guests and put them together.
Mhm.
And I became the co-chair of those shows for a few years all over Texas. And through that, met people and got hired as an assistant editor at DC first, and then moved over to Marvel. And um, what I always like to say is, you know, I started out wanting to be a journalist, and of course that helped me later with my writing. But you know, a door opens, and you decide whether to walk through that door or not. You know, one thing's for sure, if you don't walk through that door, nothing's going to happen. But if you do walk through the door, then, you know, something may happen, and it might be different. It might not be what you expected, but it could lead someplace, you know, kind of interesting. So I
Absolutely.
always looked at it that way. I always said, well, you know, I didn't start out wanting to be a comic book editor, but I like comic books, and I'm, you know, through the connections I made, I'm being offered a job at DC Comics. So I loaded up my U-Haul trailer and drove up to New York, and you know, I've been working in entertainment ever since.
So do you like which do you like better, DC or Marvel? That's going to be the
Oh,
question.
oh no. Well,
That's the
everything's based on our own experiences, you know.
yeah.
And uh,
Also, you've worked for both of them, so that's probably like trying to pick between your favorite child.
no, I definitely have a favorite child. One of the other one I love. The other one, you know, send it. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. You know, it's like everything's based on our own experiences. It's like, for instance, I was Hong Kong. I loved Hong Kong. It was like a second home to me. But the Hong Kong that I experienced, the Hong Kong that I lived in, no longer exists.
Yeah.
You know, it disappeared, and you know, there are vestiges of it. There are still remnants of it, but the feeling, um, the culture that was there at that time is no longer there. Is something different now, and someone that visits Hong Kong right now will probably love it because that's their Hong Kong. They don't
Right.
know the Hong Kong that I knew.
Yeah.
So I say it the same way with you know, DC and Marvel. They're organic changing entities. They're not the same now as they were back when I worked for them. I was at uh, I was at DC for about 2 years, and it was a very corporate environment. But also, I was a very young, very naive, very inexperienced person at that point. Knew nothing about New York, knew nothing about comic books, and I had a lot to learn. Mike Carlin was my boss on the Superman books, and he taught me a great deal about putting together comic books. You know, it was a trial by fire sometime because it was really fast paced, really corporate, but I don't regret those years. It was a learning experience. But then I was hired in the Silver Surfer office at Marvel, and my boss there was Craig Anderson, and I was at Marvel for about 5 or 6 years, and I have to say that it was completely different than DC because it was like a family.
Mm.
You know, everybody hung out together. Everybody had dinner together. Everybody had lunch together. We had office parties all the time. Mark Grunwald made sure that there was always a good sense of camaraderie. And my boss, Craig Anderson, gave me a great deal of responsibility. I put together I put together the Conan books, Conan Saga and Savage Sword of Conan.
Mm.
I worked on Guardians of the Galaxy and Thanos Quest. And so Craig had, even though I was listed as the assistant editor on some of those books, well, like, you know, What the and What If, he really let me do almost full editing on a lot of those. So I really learned a lot from Craig. And so for me, I look back at my Marvel years, and I like them much better than my DC years. But that's my experience, and it's all based on the people that were there at the time, the opportunities I was given, the sense of family that I had, and being a very young person moving from Texas to New York and having never ever been up north before in my whole life. It was the family that I needed because it really gave me a sense of community. Whereas without that, I would have been completely adrift. So,
So
I always have a fondness for Marvel. Plus, I really like the Marvel characters. Maybe
oh
that goes
yeah,
Right.
back to finding that book in my brother's rooms, when I was a kid. But I've always loved the Marvel characters because, I think a lot of other people have said this at this point too. But I love the Marvel characters because they're human. There's
Right.
a lot. You can have empathy for them. You can see yourself in them.
yeah.
You can root for them. You can stand on the sidelines and feel like you're rooting for one of your own. And I think that's something Stan Lee and the other creators that he worked with knew very well. The way to connect, the way to build an audience is to make these folks feel like they have a sense of family, a sense of community with our characters.
Oh yeah.
And that was the kind of atmosphere also that was in the office at the time when I worked there.
So was Stan Lee still a presence at Marvel at that time, or was that around the time he wasn't really around anymore?
Well, Stan would be around some. He was living in California at the time when I was at Marvel. It was during the DeFalco years when I was there. DeFalco was editor in chief. And Stan would still come in. He was still a consultant there, but he was also starting his work in California. But he would come in and he was good friends with Jim Salicrup, who's also a good friend of mine, the Spider
I
Man
know
editor.
all these names you're saying,
Yeah.
like the rock star names of my youth.
Yeah. And Jim would always invite me out to lunch with him and Stan. And so we'd go and just listen to Stan, and it was always just so much fun. And Stan would come to the Marvel Christmas parties. Back then, I don't know if they do it anymore, but back then we had these big, lavish black tie Christmas parties. And they were just legendary.
I'm
About
sure.
the shenanigans that went on, which, I can't even talk about. But it was, before the days of internet, so you got away with a lot more. And but we had a fantastic time before the internet.
Oh, I'm sure.
But Stan would always come to those, and so I have pictures of myself with Stan in like 4 decades. I have like these 4 pictures that I always show people side by side. And I look different in all of them. Like in the 80s, I have this weird mullet hairdo, or in one picture I'm doing this, and another picture I look like this, and I look so like geared on that decade. And you look at Stan, and he doesn't age in any of the photos. He looked the same
Right.
in the photos.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost like he was just going to defy the odds and just be with us forever. I mean, that's the way it felt about Stan, and in a way he is, whatever he and
Absolutely.
Jack and Steve worked on. I mean, all of that is going to survive long, long into the future.
That is what a lot of people loved about Stan Lee, was his polite stubbornness to have everything the way that he wanted to have it.
And doing it in I don't know what he was like in the office, or, if he ever like really came down hard on people, but it almost seemed like Stan got things done by just being Stan. It's not like he had to be mean to people. Yeah.
Right.
No, that was my impression anyway. And Salicrup loved him to death. And I trust Jim with my life. Jim's a great guy. So anybody Jim likes, I like.
So
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead, Jason.
I was going to ask, well, so you did, of course, work on the Sensational She-Hulk.
Yeah.
You worked on that with John Byrne, who is, one of the most influential artists, at Marvel. Like when I think of Spider-Man, like that's, the John Byrne version of Spider-Man is like what pops in my head. So what was it like working on that series with him?
Oh, I loved working with John. And actually, John asked for me to be editor on that series. And I was very honored. I'd known John from our group out in Connecticut. We would always go to John's house and play volleyball. So I knew him. It's not like he was a stranger. He was a friend. Yeah. And we had a fantastic time working on that book. We collaborated quite a bit on the jokes, and John would like run plots past me, and he would tell me what it was he wanted to do. I would try to throw in my 2 cents on things that I came up with. But people always ask me, did I know that he was going to use me as a character in the book? And the answer is no. I never had any idea, because whenever he would do the plot, or whenever he would send me anything to read, I was never a character in the books. But then when he penciled it and inked it and sent it in, all of a sudden there I was. So it was always a surprise. And I always thought it was hilarious because if you've ever seen me in the She-Hulk books, John has me in this big palatial penthouse office with wall-to-wall windows and people bringing me my coffee on a tray. I guarantee you it was not that way. In fact, when I was editing She-Hulk, my office was one of 3 offices in a little area below the main office floor that was called the dungeon. We lived there, called it the dungeon, because no one ever came to see us. We had no windows. It was like 4 offices down there. It was like Hildy Mesnick, me, and Marie, and then Kelly Cravisi. It was 3 offices. Mindy Newell was down there for a while too. And no one ever came to see us. Like if somebody from the other floor came down there and like you go, whoa, why are they here? Did something happen? And we even had a pet rat down there in our office for a while. Not a wild rat. It was a Japanese hooded rat. And Marie and I had it in the office down there for a long time and no one ever knew. So that just shows you like how no one ever came down there. So that was my reality. Marie and I sharing like what felt like a 10 by 10 room. It probably was. So wow. John's reality, I prefer John's reality for me,
Right. So the lavish lifestyle of a comic book artist.
Well, if someone brings me my coffee on a silver tray every morning, I think that's a good start for every day.
Yeah, good start to the day for sure. Sadly, we are coming to the end of our time. I know me and Jason are very cheap men. We didn't pay for a Zoom subscription, so we only get about 40 minutes an episode.
There's so much more to talk about.
Oh,
I know. Well, that's why we have to have you on again.
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah. So I'll plug my website, evapublishing.com, happyspacepop.com. If you're interested in booking talent for shows, I've Mike Zeck, Arthur Sudam. I mean, I've got great folks. Eva Inc. at AOL.com, and that's INK. I do not have any tattoos. That's not what it means. Eva Inc. INK is ink for books, and I was using that for a very long time before the tattoo fad. So.
Excellent. And of course, people can see you at Pensacon. I'm sure that you are going to have many wonderful things to
sign.
Yes, absolutely. Please bring her your books to sign, everybody. And again, you can see her there at the Pensacola Bay Center in Pensacola, Florida at Pensacon, May 21st through the 23rd. It's been so fantastic to have you on. We have to do it again.
We've got 4 minutes.
I know we do have 4 minutes. Let's talk about at Pensacon.
Quick question.
What kind of things are you bringing to your table with you to show to the people?
I'll have art prints. I'll have books. I'll have artists, like actual live people that you can actually talk to, and they'll talk back.
Are you doing any panels this weekend?
I don't know. They haven't told me yet.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm also coloring sketches. Like if you order a sketch from Michael Golden or another artist, I'm also hand coloring sketches. That's just something I have started doing because I was a colorist for so many years and people were asking me. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do that. I'm sure I'm doing a panel. They haven't told me yet.
If not, just sneak into one of Jason's panels and tell him to get up and take over.
Ask me something that that I won't expect.
Well, let's see. I see that you have a beautiful yard there in Texas. What are your lawn care secrets?
For someone else to do it.
For someone else to do it. Absolutely. I think that's the key. No matter how it looks, as long as someone else does it, it's an amazing yard.
Yeah, and don't like do an outdoor interview like when it's dusk and mosquitoes are coming out.
Favorite place to get New York pizza?
Oh gosh, well, Ray's famous pizza. Yeah, and there's different locations for that. I love New York pizza.
Did you ever think about catching a pet rat on the streets of New York to take back to your office with you?
However, my first apartment in New York, there were rats that lived in the walls. And I used to have nightmares at night that they were going to eat through the walls and attack me.
I feel like that's a solid fear while living in New York.
Well, they started chewing around the lights, the electrical sockets to try to get into the room.
Oh no.
Like, you know, I call an exterminator. So the exterminator came and poisoned all the rats inside the wall. So then we had dead rats in the wall for like a month, and it smelled wonderful.
So is it true living in New York, they have a there's a statistic that says if you live in New York, you are never more than 5 feet away from a rat?
Oh yeah, absolutely, I'm sure.
Ew.
They're everywhere.
You should have made them pay rent instead of calling the exterminator, and that would have been beneficial for you as well.
I know. Well, we told our landlady about it because after we killed the rats, then the horseflies came to, like, I guess they were a direct extrapolation from the dead rats. And then we had an infestation of horseflies in the apartment, and our landlady didn't believe us. So we, like, killed all the horseflies and put them in a baggie and, like, mailed them to her.
Ooh.
That is
Renee,
some grade A horror movie.
It has been
point.
absolutely fantastic talking to you. I hope you want to come back on the show because we have a lot more to talk about. And I promise next time we will have paid for a year of Zoom, and we will be able to talk to you longer.
Okay. Well, I really enjoyed talking to you guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
And I'm going to meet you. I'm going to come by your table and say hi next week. So
yes.
I will be there. And if you would like to email us, you can email us at openmikerspodcast@gmail.com. We are at Open Micers on Twitter and Open Micers Podcast on Facebook. And that's going to do it for this week. So, Jacob, let's say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Do this.
Goodbye.
Mwah.
Mwah.
Mwah. It's a piece of pie.
Mwah.